morning, everyone, and I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining our show. And our special guest today is Tony Martignetti, and he will be sharing with us about his passion, his work, and I hope those stories will give you a lot of inspirations and motivations to reflect, what you're going through and maybe giving you a lot of energy to carry on. So, Tony, the spotlight is for you. Would you please share with us a bit about yourself and your passion and your work? Yeah.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm thrilled to be here and just to connect with you guys from across the pond, from many ponds, from many miles away. And maybe I'll start by sharing that, what I do now is I'm working with leaders, I call them accomplished leaders, to help them feel more fulfilled and to lead with purpose. And I do that because I was one of those people who had gone on a journey to figure out, what is it that I'm meant to do in my life? And I asked those questions like, I've gotten to the top of my mountain, as I like to call it. And then I felt like, is this it? Is this all there is? There's got to be more to life than what I'm experiencing. And so I decided to question a lot of those things. And as I did, I realized that you can have more if you're willing to ask the right questions of yourself. And so that's what I do with people. And I do it with individuals and with groups, and I do leadership programs. And I am honored and thrilled to do the work I do.
Wow, thanks for sharing, Tony. And we are curious, when you were young, was you imagine you doing this job as of today?
Well, I love that you asked that, because there's an interesting thing about my youth that I've actually feel like I've come back to my youth. And let me explain. So when I was a child, I was an artist, and, most children draw and, do coloring and all of that as young children. But through most of my youth, I was known for doing my artwork. I was always creating worlds, rooms and environments that had different emotional feelings. Where people would walk in and they need to feel more joy, or they'd feel more, calm, or they would feel maybe a little more anxiety, or something that would get them excited. So there was a sense of like, that's what I was doing, and I didn't know that it was weird or unique. And a lot of my teachers told me, "Wow, you have something unique. You have a very unique gift. You're good at this." But eventually, as time went on, and as I got further on in my education, there were people in my life, adults, who told me like, "Hey, you've got to do something that's going to, make money, that's going to give you a living and all of that." And and I decided to leave the world of art and go more into the world of, probably the most polar opposite of what art would be considered, is more into the science world and become a pre-med doctor. So my initial schooling in college, or I don't know, university, however you refer to it, was a pre-med, or going to become a doctor. And it's very different, right? And when I went into this schooling, what I realized is that what I was after was, I loved the study of the bones. I want to be a radiologist and seeing how like the structure of the body, maybe there was an artistic part of this that really attracted me to this work. But I was also really good at science. Quickly, I realized that this was not going to be my path. And I switched into business and I got a business degree. So I went from art to science to business. I liked them all. I mean, it just shows you my curiosity and, desire to really learn as much as possible about the world and about different disciplines. But I still hadn't discovered my true path. What I did do as I got past my degree and into the world of work is that I started to really double down and say, I'm going to be, a finance professional. I'm going to learn the language of business, which is numbers. And I was really good at it. And most of my career was doing numbers for high tech and then eventually biotech, which really kind of married the sciences into the business world. For most of my career, almost 25 years of my life, I spent doing financial and strategy roles inside of the biotech industry. So a very successful career, but very far away from the world of doing art, right?
Well,
So,
Tony, I think that it going back to the circle where you first like in your career, in your life, that will be in doing the art. Because whatever you're
yeah.
doing at the moment, actually, is the work of art. You change people, you help the people to find a purpose, and that is the work of art. It's not a work of, it could be a work of science, but to me, it's more the work of art to me. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that in a moment, and let Vivian and I and the audience understand more about the career you've been through. So you select, a career in finance, and be very successful in finance, and then on top of the mountain that you mentioned earlier, and then there's something missing in there. What missing
Mhm.
that make you change, though?
Yeah. It's funny. There's along the way of on my journey, there's a lot of people who told me as they got to know me that like, oh, you're not the typical finance person. You're not the typical, person who does numbers. And I would tell them like, yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you for that, insight. But this is what I do, and this is how I need to show up because, oftentimes we create the persona of what does a successful finance person look like. I need to be like that. And so, as I modeled myself into that person, I continued to work into that mold. And one of the things that I've come to realize, and I think we've all come to realize, is that if we've got to stop fitting ourselves into a mold. We're not meant to fit into boxes. We have to break free from thinking that we are one thing. We're many things. But that's how I model my life is based on the fact that I need to be a good finance professional and therefore I need to be great at numbers. I need to be very analytical. But here I am. I'm a person who likes to color outside the lines. And I like people, and people were very much telling me that you're a people person. You love to understand people. And I just didn't listen to the clues until much later on in life when I realized, gosh, these people were right. They were right that I should have done something different or, followed that calling along the way. Um, so,
Wow.
so yeah.
Were you happy when you do the finance work back then?
Yeah, it's to some extent. I mean, I don't want to say it's like it was all like doom and gloom. I mean, I was working in industry that was really amazing. I was working in the biotech industry, specifically working in rare diseases. So a lot of the things that I was working on, I used to always say I was enabling science. I was enabling, breakthrough disease therapies that like save people's lives. I mean, I've had situations where I would walk into conferences or in meetings and people would walk up to me and tell me like, oh, you work at, such and such company. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, thank you for saving my son's life. And
Wow.
I would just be taken back by that. Like to realize that even if I played a small role in the overall picture of developing drugs, therapies, as you call it. I don't call it drugs. It sounds so wrong. But then you're making an impact. And I have to also, whenever I was leading teams, it's always important to connect the dots between what my work is and what we're trying to accomplish. And it was so powerful when you can make that connection to say, there's a person out there whose life is better because of what we do.
Mm, wow. That's
Uh,
absolutely there were person out there, their lives were better because the work you do. But and then at the moment of realizing that there's something inside of you that wants to explore something new, a new version of Tony. So we
yeah,
would like to bring you back to that exploring moment, that happened
yeah.
in a period in your life. What happened back then?
Yes, I knew we'd go there. So eventually, I came to this place where I started to see myself falling into this pattern where I was, driving so hard to serve goals that weren't mine. Working really hard and losing sight of who I was. Not spending time with my family as much as I used to, and finding myself just working harder and harder. And I lost sight of who I was. And I had, in those darker moments, I decided like, I got to do something about this because this is not sustainable. And as I started to come out of that dark period and start to realize, well, what is it that I'm here for? What is the contribution I want to make? I started to question a lot of the things the choices I had made. And that's where the reprogramming started for me, which is to say, like, who am I really? What am I here for? My tagline is inspiration through honest conversations. And the reason why I love that tagline is because your inspiration to do the next thing in your life comes through asking yourself the hard questions, the honest questions that you need to ask yourself about who you really are. Not what you think society wants you to be, but who you really are. And that's what I did at that point. And as I did, I started to discover things about like, wow, like if I want to do something with my one precious life, I need to start making different choices. And that means being the author of my life as opposed to just showing up and expecting other people to tell me who I am.
But Tony, the question who we are is a very hard question to ask,
I
right?
know.
And many people until they passed, they couldn't find the answers. And so during that period, how did you find your answer? That's what we want.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
you force yourself to give you the answer to the question who
Mm.
Tony is actually?
Yeah. And so I guess part of the answer to this question is that the question doesn't necessarily get definitively answered ever. It's an ongoing journey of discovering who you really are. But the way it starts is by realizing that the question has to be the starting point. So when you start asking that question, who am I really? Well, it's not this. It's not who I am right now. It's not who I'm showing up as right now, because this is not serving me. So what is the next version of me going to look like? Who am I going to explore next as part of who I'm becoming? So what I discovered in that questioning is that something about me was pushing me towards this world of exploring leadership as a path of, how people are showing up as leaders, not just as like, okay, well, how our business is being run and how our leaders running businesses, but also like each individual, how are we leading ourselves, self-leadership? Because I was not leading myself effectively. It all starts with our own individual journey and realizing that because of who I was being, I realized that I had to do something differently about who I was. And that, in essence, was a gift that I had to give to others. So I had to, in my journey of discovering myself, I discovered that that's the gift that I had to give to others.
Tony, sorry, go ahead, Vivian.
Tony, I heard the story and it's very inspired, the courage that you're able to take change. And that courage is not easy to come to a lot of people because of whatever they're having, the burden, the priority and stuff like that. But you change, like a big, a full spectrum. So what gives you that courage to exploring who you are?
Yeah. I love that question because I think all of us have the courage if we dig down and we kind of look for it inside ourselves. And I think it comes from this place of looking at, like, what do we have to lose? What are the things that we're willing to give up? And asking another question, which is slightly different. What are we tolerating right now that we shouldn't be tolerating? Oftentimes we put up with so much. And when we tolerate all these things that are not serving us, and we say, I don't want to tolerate that anymore. I don't want this in my life any longer. How do I let go of those things that we accept because that's just is what we think it is what it is? So we have to somehow allow ourselves to shift from, this is my life to my life could be something more than this. And maybe I've allowed this to happen because this is just the circumstances, the environment that I've created around me. And by letting go of all of that and leaping into the unknown and allowing other things to open up, even though there's still a lot of uncertainty about that, you could still make mistakes. Things can go wrong, but that's okay. It'll go wrong, and then you'll fix it. You'll learn things and continue to evolve. But if you stay where you are, stay in the place of, I'm going to continue to tolerate what is and continue to accept what is, then what happens is your life will not get better than what it is. It's you stay in your, as I said earlier about the box. If we say that we're one thing and that's what we are, we're accepting. But if we let go of that, we can allow ourselves to expand beyond that point.
Wow. Tony, you were in the box, right? Then you got out of the box, finding your passion. Inside the box, there's securities, there's money, there's a salary, there's benefits and everything. So there's a lot of people get out of the box for a while and look out for who they were, and then start to prioritize again, then get back to the box, and where that things are certain, but then you chose to stay out of the box and unbox yourself and give that gift that you're fighting to others and start the whole new journey all over again. A whole learning process, how everything is new. So, why did you choose to do that instead of get back to the box as a new and improved Tony?
I love this question because there's two things. First of all, getting out of the box doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to quit their job and go and do something, start an entrepreneurial journey. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it just means approaching your world of work with a different lens and saying, I am always seeing myself as the finance person, so therefore I'm analytical and only this is the way I need to show up. But instead, transcend that. Think differently about how you're showing up. Maybe it's about being the finance individual, but also saying who says I can't have creativity and think more like a marketing person as well, or creating a transition from finance to marketing or to anything else for that matter. Or who's to say that a finance person could write a book? Right? I've written a book, which I'm still in shock about that. I'm writing my second book now. So, thank you. But so I'm going to get back to your question to say that your question was, going back into the box, going back into going into a career once you've come out and done this. That's absolutely something that I never leave that option unexplored. We're always evolving. I think that's one thing that, you don't want to say, I'm never going back and I'm never going to do that. Never say never. It's something that you want to make sure that you're always keeping yourself open to options and to be able to rethink what you think is true, maybe not true. I love being wrong. And it's not that it's wrong. It's not necessarily wrong. It's about evolving your thinking. So as you move through life, you learn new things. You learn new ways of showing up and deciding, this is what I've learned at this period in time during my journey. And what I've now realized after learning this is that because of this learning, I can go back and do this. And this is going to allow me to show up in a very powerful way. And that's what my journey has allowed me to do, is to create these experiences to be able to add value in a different way. which is exactly where, and I don't want to, go on too much of a tangent here, but this is what I often tell people is that there's there's no wrong turns. It's just, lessons learned. And your narrative that you share is about how you look at it and how you create value out of the things that you've learned in your past.
Mm. Tony, I have a question about this because it surprised me when I was young. I always thought that accomplished leaders are very
Mm,
well equipped with everything, with the technical competencies, with the purpose, with everything. But
yeah.
then the more I talk to people like you are, the more I realize a leader also have areas that they need to, you know, they need help with. So they have areas of vulnerabilities and things like that. So and how can you come to business leaders who are accomplished leaders, right? And help them to unveil what works and what not work for them. It's hard. It's not easy to tell accomplished leaders to say, hey, things not working here and you need to change. What is the magic that you do, Tony?
Yeah, well, it actually comes back to this thought of like, if you are not open to changing your thinking, then you're gonna be the person who's stuck thinking this one way, and the
Mm,
world around you is going to continue to change
mm,
and evolve, and you're going to be stuck holding that one belief that no longer holds in a world that's evolved. So the environment has this really funny way of constantly shifting and changing. And if you're a leader who's stuck in your beliefs and thinking my path to success is geared towards do X, then Y, then Z, and this equals success.
mm,
That's not going to be true. You have to be constantly thinking to yourself, where could I be wrong? Where could I need help in seeing things differently? Where have what has gotten me here might not get me to the next place because, things have changed. And I may need other people's help to really see things in a different way, or just stepping back and taking another view of the landscape. Often people talk about seeing the forest through the trees. We have to zoom out and see the situations that we've gotten ourselves into and allow ourselves to not get too what we call myopic in our view, which is very singular focus. And that's what great leaders do. They allow themselves to step away and get perspective.
mm, mm. In the work that you do, that's one, you have people find purpose, right? But then there's another word that you add on that is inspiring purpose. So it's even
Yes.
larger. So can you help me to define why that inspiring purpose matters these days?
Yeah, because is one thing, and it's great, that people find their purpose, but you have to be driven. And when I say driven, I mean like it has to be something that really sparks you from the inside to
Mm,
want to do this, and that it really, has you so lit up to want to show up every day and just go and do this every day. Inspired purpose is all about connecting to inspiration, that you're inspired and you're able to create that spark in others
mm,
that allows them to want to show up and serve that purpose as well.
mm,
So, adding that one word allows you to connect with something deeper. Because I think inspiration is something, I may lose you here, but I'll just say it. Inspiration it's a communication with with your soul.
mm,
And when inspiration shows up, you know that you've got something bigger happening.
mm,
It's not just like, oh, great, we've got a purpose that says we're going to go and we want to move as many widgets as possible. That's we're big on, we want to sell as many razors as possible to borrow from like maybe a Gillette or
mm,
P&G. But that's not the real purpose. The purpose is maybe something bigger than that, which is to say we want to, you know, inspire our people to do the best work possible based on a mission and a purpose that is about like creating an impact on the world
Mm.
that is bigger than just selling razor blades.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand now. Tony, I have a question. Back then, when you find your inspiring purpose, right? Who were in that journey with you? Could you name some of
Yeah.
them, or the people that has that impact on that journey with you?
Well, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't include my wife. She's been was a great impact on me, and trusting and believing in me in that process of really taking the risk and the leap into the unknown. So that was somebody who was really important to me. And I would say another person who really comes to mind is, the people like Ed Everett's coach that I worked with, David Taylor Klaus, who was another coach, and Rich Litvin, who was also a coach that I worked with. These are all people who have shaped my thinking. And one of the things that I'll mention these names, but there's a lot of people who they're just by reading their books and exploring their thinking really got me to this place of seeing things differently. One book that had an impact on me at that time, well, two, I'm going to say two. One was The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, which had me really challenging my thinking about like the accepted rules of society, which I think oftentimes we get stuck in that pattern that like these are the rules we live by. But what if we just throw those rules out and we say, what are the rules that I want to live by? What are my rules? Right? So there was that book, and then the other book that comes to mind, and I'll just use a quote out of it too. It's by Peter Bregman called "Leading with Emotional Courage." One of my favorite lines from that book is, "If you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything." And when I think about that quote, it's what led me through all of the early stages of my coaching journey, which is to say that like we have to be willing to open ourselves up to a range of emotions. Because if you're afraid of, failing, if you're afraid to lean into, not knowing, then it's hard to make the leap into the unknown. If you don't want to get uncomfortable, then it's hard to make anything happen.
Thank you so
right?
much for sharing that. Yes. What was the name of the first book again? The Courage of Extraordinary Mind.
The Code of the Extraordinary Mind.
The Code. Okay. I have never heard of that book. I will definitely look at on that one.
Yeah.
But then, since we mentioned about books, why don't we mention about yours? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us the journey that Tony to write your first book and about to release your second one, though. Tell us about that, could you?
Absolutely. So my first book was released, I think it was June 2021, and it's called Climbing the Right Mountain, A Journey to an Inspired Life. And the book itself is really, it's not just about me, but there are stories in there about my own, journeys. And I love climbing mountains. So there's some stories about climbing mountains the right way and the wrong way. But the whole idea is that really we have to define success on our own terms. And we can find fulfillment, but we have to step back from our current path and rethink the path we're on, and so I have some guideposts I've put in there to help people think differently about how they're navigating their lives, so they can go on a path that is a little more aligned with who they want to be, who they want to become.
So. Wow. And how did you
Yeah.
how did you think about the idea of writing that? We would like to know how the ideation process all started. Though.
Yeah. It's a good question. So first of all, it came from a lot of the conversations I was having with people who I was coaching at the time. That what I was talking to with them, their challenges, and how they all kind of interweaved with like my own challenges. Oftentimes when we're coaching others or when we're working with others, they're a reflection of our own challenges. No person has got it all figured out, but what happens is you start to see how your own experiences can help others. And so that's where a lot of the content and the thought process around the book, and even the reason why I wrote the book is because I wanted to serve others through this process of revealing that. And in terms of the writing process, it came together relatively quickly. I wanted to make it super quick, super short, because I didn't want it to be something that was filled with, too many pages. I wanted people to be able to consume it. So I really just started writing, and I think the biggest part of it was trying to pull away the things that weren't going to make an impact. So I made it very succinct. It took me about a year or so to write. It was a great journey. I really enjoyed it, and people have really told me that they love the fact that it's right to the point. There's no fluff.
So the whole idea was through the conversation that we had during the coaching. So it seems to me that, and honestly, it's so obvious to me that a lot of people out there are claiming the wrong mountain. So if they want to stop, wasting their time, the energies, and not just there, but the people around them, times and energies also going with them in the wrong mountain, and get down and claim another one, the right one. What is the first thing that they need to do, Tony, so that they can, go back and then find another mountain?
Yeah. So first of all, pause and don't panic. Don't feel as though like, oh, this has been a waste of time. Sometimes there's a reason why you've started to climb this particular mountain that you're on. But what you want to do is you want to start by, pausing for a moment and say, okay, why did I start climbing this mountain in the first place? What was it about the past? So I often think about this as a time traveling exercise where you're thinking, looking to the past, what were the things that got me here in the first place? Look back on the great things you've collected along the way, the great experiences, and use that as the fuel to really think about the next thing you're going to do. Because then we go into the future. The future vision is, who do I want to become? What is it that right now I'm not experiencing that I really want to experience? And what is that vision of where I'd like to see myself next? Because what we want to do is we want to start being that person now. We want to embody that future person in this moment. And so what we're going to try and do is bring those pieces of the future self into the present moment. And we're going to take action now in the present to start embodying that future self. So those are some elements of the process. There's a lot more to it, but that's a good starting point, is to really start to look into the past, question, did I start on this path for a reason? Is there something about this that I enjoy? Do I just need to make a slight tweak? Or, am I completely feeling like I need a huge major shift? And then the future, what is missing that I'm feeling like I want more of in my life? And how can I embody that now? The most classic example of that is if you say to yourself, like, I want to be a runner. I want to be a marathoner. And right now you say to yourself, well, what do I need to do to embody that marathon runner? Well, I need to run. I need to start running. And that's what a marathoner does. They eat well, they run, they get up, and that's how they focus. And so you start embodying the qualities of who it is that person you are. That's who you're going to be right now.
And pick your book, and then and then see the guys from the book, right? Tony, I have a question also. Since you mentioned about the book that you are writing now, what is that about?
Yeah.
That you want to share with us about that?
Sure, I'll share. Like, it's still a ways off. It's not going to be out till probably early 2023. But the book itself is called Campfire Lessons. And so it's what it is it's these lessons that have come through. I've interviewed over 190 people in my podcast called the Virtual Campfire, and what I've done is I've learned a lot of common threads about their stories they've shared with me through their journey. And what I want to do is I want to share those lessons with people, because what I've found through all these stories is that as we reflect on our past, there's a lot of gold in really understanding why we choose certain things, why we, go through these different moments in our lives that reveal our gifts, and how we can use that as a jump off point to really, create the life that we want. So I would say that the campfire lessons are not just like a random set of lessons. They're lessons that will help people to create that momentum in their lives that they've been missing, but told through the stories of people who have transformed their journeys, their lives through these amazing moments in life.
Wow. Since we understand, you when you as a child, your university time, you work in the corporate life, your current work now, and your book coming. Is there any exciting in your momentum in the next couple of years that uh, that Tony McNally is working on and would like to share with our audience so that we can celebrate in advance with you, though?
Well, I have one that's really near term, I should say. I'm climbing Kilimanjaro in August, so that's really something we should celebrate. So
For how many days?
I'm actually training. What's that?
For how many days to get there?
So I'm doing a 9-day trek of up to the summit, 19,000 feet to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. So it's quite an endeavor. It's the tallest mountain that I will have climbed, and I'm really excited, nervous, and all those things. But yeah, so that's something I'm proud of. But beyond that, one of the things that I'm really, looking forward to is the book and getting more retreats out into the world. I want people to experience more connection. One of the things that's really near and dear to my heart is getting people to really express themselves, and getting in connection more. So that's one thing that I'm trying to put into fruition as we get into 2023. I'm waiting until 2023 because I think we're still a little bit of in flux in 2022 with COVID and everything. So stay posted.
Wow, absolutely. We wish you enjoy the climbing and be safe. And then share with us that journey when you finish, or if you can share every day, that would be good. But I don't think that you can share every day, right? So first is
Yeah.
make sure that you be safe and be trained well so that you can accomplish that climbing. And we wish all the best to you. I have one last question, which is the promise that I need to ask from my communication coach. Is asking every guest a bizarre question. Okay. So my bizarre question is, if you compare, who you were back then and then who you are now, getting out of the box, how your wife would tell you, you know, about the old version of Tony and the new version of Tony.
Yeah, it's a great question because I think she's always seen me as somebody who is insanely curious, to the point where insanely curious, which because there's something about me that I'm insatiable when it comes to learning new things and wanting to explore new things. And I think that's always been there, but now she sees it's unleashed in a way that um, it's untethered to work. When I was at work in the corporate world, there were times when I just felt like it was a bit muted,
Mm,
held back, and now I feel like I'm free to really be me.
mm,
And I think that's what she would say most of all, is that she sees me expressing more of who I am.
wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that
Hmm.
I also want everybody, including me, including Vivian, my children, to freely to be expressing being themselves. And
Hmm.
I hope that we will be able to find our purpose and the inspiring purpose to live our life by. So thank you so much for coming to our program, Tony, and share your story with us. And we really appreciate that.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you very much. We hope that one day, if you and your wife ever travel to Asia and got a chance to travel to Vietnam, please let Vivian and I know in advance so that we will be, so glad to welcome you to our country. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day there. All right.
Thank you.
Great day,
Thank you very
Tony.
You well.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Thank you, Vivian.